So first of all, we're going to get all the big sort of heavy mud off, the chunks of mud. These aren't too bad, but you know, when they got big lumps on them. I'll do this outdoors and then we'll move indoors so we've got better audio and stuff. But yeah, just a good stiff brush, preferably with a bit of a pointy thing, or you can use something else. Just get the majority of the main mud off before we go into more detailed brushing. This mud is really like clay, it really sticks to the midsole and the outsole. You don't really need to clean the bottom, to be honest, because I mean it's for hiking, it's just going to get muddy and dirty again. But if you're doing this indoors, you might just want to get rid of some of the chunks in there. Okay, so just as the title suggests, video today on cleaning and treating your hiking boots. Just a disclaimer, all hiking boots are made of different materials, they have different ways of cleaning and you know, reproofing and treating the materials. There is some wrong ways to do it, but there's a lot of right ways to do it as well. It's just sort of whatever you prefer. So you're always going to get comments like, are you saying that you're doing it wrong or whatever. That if you've got your way of doing it and you're happy with it, then do that. There is a few different ways of doing it, and it does depend on the material, what type of leather, all those kind of things. So this video is more to help people that haven't got a clue when they're starting out, or they're a bit worried about what exactly to do. They don't want to ruin their boots. I'll try and give you a pointer about, you know, why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it for these particular boots, and a few suggestions of some other products and other methods that you can use. So if you don't want to hear me waffling on, because I am going to give a few details and a bit of context to this video, then I'll put a time in the description below and you can kind of just skip through it all and get straight to the point and watch the cleaning and the treating. But I do think what I'm saying is relevant. It actually add some context to why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it. So these are the Lowa Renegade hiking boots, and when you buy them they're made of nubuck leather, which has a bit of a nap to it. It's a bit like suede, but not as loose in fibres. It's not suede, it can be top grain or even full grain leather, it can be quality leather. It's just that it's been kind of roughed up, sanded or buffed or whatever to give it a little bit of a nap, a bit of a texture. I'm not sure that really has any has any functional, practical use. As far as I'm aware, it's just really aesthetic, so I'm not sure why they even do it on hiking boots, to be honest with you. Maybe it's to get rid of some of the marks and the scarring on the leather or something like that, I don't know. But as far as I know, if you do know any practical use of nubuck over smooth leather, then put it in the comments below. Thing is, I do walking a lot in the home counties of England. It's rambling, and in a lot of senses it's less strain on the boots than, you know, hiking over mountains and God knows what. But it does mean that you're low level, there's a lot of water, mud, bogginess. The mud and the clay and even chalk in the soil can take its toll on your boots, and so you do want to protect them against that. Nubuck, you know, it's not quite as good as smooth leather usually for water resistance and being able to clean the mud off because of that nap. It kind of holds things a bit more easily and it soaks a bit more easily. When you get boots, they're generally treated at the factory a bit, but you don't know how long they've been sitting on the shelf, so after your first walk or two you want to kind of prep them a bit. And with these, when I first treated them, I cleaned them up and I treated them with a wax. You can see here this other pair. Yes, that is another pair of the same boots. I'll explain maybe in another video why I've got two pairs of the same thing, but I don't know if it will show up in video so well. But it does have a bit of a shine because they have been treated, but these have still got that nubuck nap to it. It's like a brushed, soft feeling rather than smooth and shiny. And I'll explain in a bit how I got that even after treating them. So like I say, these have been treated with wax. I used Meindl Sport Wax. There's not much left, but it's a really thick, kind of Vaseline-like, gloopy, sticky wax, really sticky. And that, when you do that on nubuck leather, it creates a shine, and it smooths out the leather and it darkens the leather. So if you don't want to lose that nubuck look, don't use wax. I knew that, but like I said, I was thinking of protecting the leather, waterproofing it better for the kind of conditions that I'm in, and so I was prepared to lose that, you know, nice looking nubuck nap sort of leather in replacement for something that would be a bit more resistant to mud and clay and water and everything. And so it's got a shine, and it almost turns it into a smooth full grain leather. It sort of changes it permanently, and it's very hard once you've waxed it to ever get that nubuck nap back again, even if you use a nubuck brush like this. It's got these plastic bristles and you're supposed to rub it and it brings back the nap, and that's what I did with these actually. But I used a cream to treat these, and I was able to bring the nap back, not quite as much as when I first bought them, but mostly I was able to bring it back again because it wasn't a heavy wax, it was just a light cream. Here's the cream that I used, quite a cheap one actually from Regatta, but I was really pleased with it, and I think that's what I'm going to use again today. So the wax, like I said, it changes the leather quite significantly, but it does protect it a lot. Problem is, you can find that over time, like waxing it, you have to hair dryer it to create some heat so that it absorbs in. Brush it, you can hair dry it again, maybe you want to do another layer of wax, keep brushing it. It takes a lot of work to try and get that wax into the leather, and these were quite resistant to it, and then you can end up with a bit of a sticky kind of waxy surface. I think I'd done that a couple of times, but then I waited until I'd used them quite a bit and they dried out, and the wax had, like, there's no stickiness at all, no waxiness to that at all anymore. It's all gone in or washed off. And then I went back to the last time I did it, I used the cream because it's less aggressive. I feel like it's got enough oils and wax in the leather now that I don't need to keep waxing it necessarily. I'll use this. If it becomes a problem, I can go back to the wax, or if the leather gets really cracked and it's getting ruined, then I'll go back to the wax again. But for now, I think I'll be using this. These boots even have some suede panels here. I don't know why. Suede isn't particularly useful really for hiking boots. I don't know why they use it. But as you can see, that's looks different to this, but it has gone kind of shiny and waxy. So you can treat any leather really. I mean, even suede, it just ruins the look of it, and that's all really. So you start by taking the laces out. Now we can work into all the nooks and crannies, and we'll just get a stiff brush and start dry brushing it again. The reason for dry brushing it is because it's not really good to constantly soak leather. I mean, I know the hiking boots, and they're going to get wet, and they're going to, you know, go through a lot of puddles and rain and wet grass, and that's the point in them. But it's just that, you know, if you are washing them and they've already dried out, maybe don't soak them again. If you just brought them home, they're muddy, and you can be bothered, go straight to the garden and hose them down there and then whilst they're still wet. Great, you know, all the mud will come off easier. Obviously, I was too lazy to do that. That's fair enough, but when it's dry, maybe don't soak them again unless you really have to. Just dry brush them like I'm doing now. I am going to do a bit like, you know, the midsole and around the sides of the sole. The bottom's always going to get muddy anyway, but some people do say that, you know, there's things in cow poo and insecticides and chemicals on farmers' fields and stuff that can degrade the glue or break down the rubber or whatever. I don't know if that's true, but it just helps to get some of the crud off there. So when you're wiping the boots down and you're waxing them or polishing them or whatever, you're not getting your cloth too dirty. Now I'm going to use this little brush to try and get in the nooks and crannies. You can just use an old toothbrush, it's quite useful. Right, now hopefully you can see some sort of a difference there already. Show the sides. So you can see that they've got mud on them, but it's not big lumps, it's not stuff that can be brushed off anymore. They've actually started to go a little bit shiny already. Now we're going to soap them. Now I'm going to use this Nikwax footwear cleaning gel, and it comes with like an applicator lid that's coming off. It's not the greatest thing, if I'm honest with you. The soap's pretty good, but it can't obviously take a lot of use because it's coming off already. But I think in future I'm going to get saddle soap. I'd probably recommend just using saddle soap, which normally comes in a little sort of tin or something, and you just add a little bit of water so you're not soaking the boots to create the foam, and then you can apply it to the boots and then wipe it off. With this I'm going to apply it just obviously with the bottom. Now you've got the boots nice and soaped up there. Sexy, right? Just going to get a damp cloth and start wiping them down. Damp, not soaking wet, by the way. And this is the bit where really a lot of the crap comes off. You're kind of cleaning them. As I said, you can just hose them and soak the crap out of them if you want to really get them super clean and get every little bit off, or if they're really bad. But to be honest with you, this normally does the job. You can obviously repeat any part of this process if you're not happy with how clean they've got and you're like, nah, I want to be a lot cleaner than that. Then just put a bit more soap on there. So I might put a bit more down here in these edges. And I don't know about this Nikwax stuff. I know with the saddle soap, it's essentially a soap, so it's got oils in it. So it's not going to harm the leather. It should sort of just add even more oils into the leather, which will make it better and more waterproof and more supple, and treat the leather, keep it moist. You do not want leather to dry out too much. And like I said, if you're really still not happy or they're just too dirty and you can't get this to work, then obviously you can just get a hose and wash them down. You can still use the soap, but then use the hose to blast them and brush them as you're doing it, and that will get them super clean. I think for now that is not too shabby, is it? It didn't take too long, and they're pretty clean, pretty different. So because that's damp, we can't apply the wax or the cream or anything straight away. So I'm going to go and have some brunch as soon as it's Sunday, and just let those dry out before I do the next step of treating the leather. Okay, so the next stage, now they've dried out a bit, shouldn't take long to dry out because, like I say, they're not completely saturated with water. It's just kind of that soapiness from the cleaning gel. Like I said, I'm going to use this leather cream. It's a bit more light and well, creamy than the wax, but not as loose as some of the other things, which I'll show you at the end of the video. So it does say on it to rub sparingly into the surface and buff to a shine. Simple instructions. You can use a lot of different things to apply this. I mean, you could use a cloth or an old rag. I've used an old sock before, but because they're cotton, I find that it kind of wastes a lot of the wax into the cotton. Cotton's really absorbent. So maybe something like a fibre cloth is mostly polyester, you know, it's pretty much plastic, it doesn't absorb too much. Or you can use your fingers, because that's a good way you get the heat from your hands, and you can rub it in with your fingers, or you can apply it with a brush. This is, as you see, it's kind of got a load of waxy stuff on it already, so I could use that to apply it. I think I'll start with my fingers and see how it goes. Be a bit sparing with it, because you can always put more on. If you put too much straight away, then you know you can end up kind of overly saturating the leather. And if you oversaturate leather, especially with the wax, not so much with this, but with the wax, it can be just like, you can end up with just really sticky, horrible leather and the wax just won't go into it. It would take a lot of brushing, you can use a hairdryer, like I say, to warm it up, which allows it to absorb into the leather a bit better. Any kind of heat is going to be good for it, and that's what the brushing does as well, really, is it adds heat into the leather to allow anything you're putting on it to absorb into it better. This leather isn't too bad, actually, despite that it was, you know, the mud made it look really dry and cracked, and it actually wasn't at all. Because I know I've put a lot of stuff into these before, a lot of wax, and I've really penetrated it into the leather and worked all those oils and waxes in there. I know that I don't have to obsessively apply this all the time again, because it's already in the leather, you know, it shouldn't really dry out. Leather really dries out when it gets soaking wet and then dries too quickly. That can be a problem. So if you are, you know, in a hot climate, or if it's summer and your boots get wet, they're more likely to crack then than in winter, because, like I say, they get soaking wet and then they dry out too quickly. I know in the army they sometimes have been advised in hot climates to put a wet cloth on your boot when it's drying out, so that it dries out a bit slower, and that stops the cracking. So there's a lot of little things you can learn and things you can do to help protect the leather, keep your boots lasting longer. I mean, you don't want to get obsessive about it, do you? You don't want to spend your whole life worrying about your bloody boots. At the end of the day, when you pay over £100 for a pair of leather hiking boots, you expect them to be pretty robust and to be able to last without you pampering them all the time. I think if they can't, well then they're no good, are they? But it is up to you to kind of take care of them a bit. Don't let your boots completely get knackered and dried out and go beyond repair, because that's just money down the drain. I don't think I did this with my fingers last time. I think I did it with a brush, but like I say, there's all different ways of doing this. I'm just going to apply it with my fingers this time, trying to work it into every little bit that you can see that looks a bit dry or untreated. And we're going to brush it after this anyway, which will spread it around a bit and get it into the nooks and crannies. Like I say, if you haven't done your boots before, you might want to apply a bit more than this. Hair dryer it, brush it again, build up the layers of wax or cream or whatever it is that you're using, so that the boots are properly protected. But because I know I've done that in the past already, I know that I don't need to go too crazy this time. I think that'll do it. That's all the cream that I need to apply. Right, and next, you can leave this to dry a little bit for a while if you want. Like I said before, I think I'm repeating myself too much, but get a hairdryer and just heat up the leather and let it soak in. You don't want to do that if your boots are wet. like I said, if your boots are wet, do not put them on the radiator. Do not hairdryer them or put them near a heat source or put them in the sun to dry out, because it will dry out too quickly and the leather will crack and they'll be ruined forever. So only do this when you know it's only got the cream or the wax on it, but other than that the leather is dry, then you can use heat, use the hairdryer, and it will soak in. But I don't think that's necessary today, so I'm just going to brush it with a dry brush with nothing on it. This, by the way, also helps to kind of protect the metal from rusting on the eyelets. How much you do of this is up to you. If it still feels sticky, then you probably want to brush it in a bit more. This is so much easier if you have a, you know, like a full leather. Turn this around a bit. If you have a full leather, kind of smooth leather, one piece leather boot, because there's none of these lines and stitches and all that. These panels and these stitches do add comfort to the boot in terms it makes it a bit more flexible and molds to your foot easier, but it makes it less weather resistant and a bit harder to clean and treat. But you know, I prefer a little bit more comfort, and then I do this, like I said at the beginning, to protect it better. You want to do short, sharp ones to produce heat. When you feel the leather, it should feel a little bit warmed up, and then you can finish with like your long kind of buffing ones, just to build up a little bit of a shine. It's never going to be that shiny because it's cream, it's not polish. And also, don't forget, these boots are actually nubuck, so they're never going to go out to like a real proper shine. But that's more aesthetic than anything, but a shine isn't purely aesthetic. A shine does allow water to roll off more easily, rather than it being rough and grainy. When it's nice and shiny, the water just kind of falls off of it, so that adds to the water resistance. Thing is with leather, if you don't treat the leather, it's just going to saturate very quickly, and then you're 100% relying on the Gore-Tex liner, which is supposed to be waterproof, but you know, Gore-Tex liners notoriously are not really completely 100% waterproof, definitely not for their lifetime anyway. They're supposed to be. There are ways apparently of retightening the fibres in the Gore-Tex, but like with certain things that go inside the footwear and clean them out and stuff, but I've never used that. I just think that if you have leather and you treat it, then the water has to work quite a lot to get through that leather, and by the time it gets to the Gore-Tex, it's kind of drying out, and the Gore-Tex doesn't have to work too hard all by itself. Then you've got two barriers against the water rather than one like you do with fabric boots. So there you go guys, that is pretty much it. So this one has had all the dry brush in, it's been cleaned, but you can see a bit of dryness in the leather, and the lighter brown bits, you know, are a little bit dry. Probably a little bit of mud left on there still, but not. I have cleaned them as you saw, so not properly muddy in comparison to these ones, which are a lot more shiny, smooth. The leather's nice and sort of treated and moist now. It's got a few oils back on the surface. You can see the difference in the shininess, I hope. They weren't in too bad a condition, they were mostly just dirty. But hopefully you can see the difference there. And I haven't worked on that a great deal. Like I said, there's one layer. You could brush it and buff it like I did, hair dryer it to soak it in, or just leave it for a day, leave it for a week if you're not using them. However long you're not using them for, just leave it to dry and to work its magic, and then you could brush it again, or you could apply another layer of conditioner and just keep going and just keep working it in until that leather is really supple and oiled up. But like I said, if you've done it before like I have, then you should only really take sort of one layer. and they're back to how they need to be again. I wouldn't go over the top and just keep hammering it with oils and waxes too much when you've already done it before. When you first get them, fair enough, but when you've done it before, you're just going to end up with really heavy, sticky, kind of gloopy leather. So now I'll just run through some of the products and other little bits of information to finish. Okay, so what I used was leather cream, okay, by Regatta. It's not expensive, seems to do a good job. What I've used before, originally on these boots, was the Meindl Sport Wax. So, boot cream, boot wax. The wax is the thickest, heaviest, stickiest one, and probably provides the best protection against water and mud and stuff, but obviously it takes a bit more working in and heating up, and it can be a bit too thick and gloopy, so you really have to kind of work it and do a lot of manual work to get that into the leather, and I wouldn't recommend doing it too much. Other guides might disagree with me, other people might disagree with me, and you know, whatever, up to you, but I personally think not too often with the wax, and then in between maybe a bit of cream, something lighter. You're never going to get a shine properly like you do with like kiwi polish. This is just very traditional polish. It's a neutral colour one. You do get coloured polishes. That's, I suppose it does, it says it nourishes and protects the leather. So it's probably a bit different to old school, you know, what polishes were years ago, which were more for aesthetic reasons, to just give it a nice shine. And you know, that classic in the army kind of buffing them to a mirror shine type thing. Maybe this is a bit more like wax nowadays, a bit different to how it used to be, but it's more for a shine and you know, to make it look nice. People don't generally use these for hiking boots so much. Depends if you're old school or not, I suppose. Best thing I found so far, I really like the cream. Another thing with my Hyx high liability boots, these are British Army boots, and they're mostly leather. Hyx recommend, I think it's on their website, they recommend you using their own brand polish, obviously. Well, it weren't very expensive, so I thought I'd get it. It's a clear polish, but it's really light. It's like a really light, it's got a sponge applicator on there as well. It's a really sort of loose, liquidy kind of thing. It's not like this thick polish like traditional polish. So when they call it wax, or they call it cream or polish, or can't always tell what it's going to be just by that, because you know, that's polish and that's polish, and they're two very different things. This is much more like a loose cream, probably like the I think it's Scarpa do the HS12 cream, which comes in a thing like this. If you can squeeze it out, it must be pretty liquid. And they say that this, unlike wax, this still allows the leather to be breathable, which is quite important with footwear, because if you've got a Gore-Tex liner trying to stop the water from coming in, it's no good if you're sweating and creating moisture from the inside too much, because then you're still going to get wet feet. So yeah, I think this is probably a good idea, and that's why I like the cream as well. I think just instead of the wax, which really clogs up the pores of the leather and stops it being so breathable, this retains the breathability but still protects it. And yeah, you want a brush maybe for applying it, and then another dry brush for buffing it. But whatever you use with the wax is going to get caked. That's the problem. Then you can use other products like the weatherproofer. This is Nikwax one again, but there's loads of different brands. They're all very similar. And that just sort of goes on the surface to create the water repellency. Not necessarily the waterproofing, really, I wouldn't say, but the surface level repellency. And that's good if you've got fabric boots, because you can't really wax or polish them. That's the footwear cleaning gel that I showed you earlier. But the main thing is some sort of wax or cream, couple of cheapo brushes, an old cloth, you know, and I'd say you could get this or some saddle soap which is traditionally for cleaning saddles, leather saddles on horses, but it works great on boots. That's about all I can say really. Obviously you do want, a stiff brush, as stiff as possible, for if you're going to dry brush it, if you're going to clean it by dry brushing it. If you don't want to, you can just use your hose and a softer brush or whatever and just make them wet, and then the mud will come off just through spraying it. But like I say, I don't think it's a good idea to constantly soak and saturate your leather. So, hope this video was helpful. Hope I didn't babble on too much, but I feel like, you know, a bit of context and all the information is important beyond just the technical side of it. And yeah, if you find these videos helpful, please do like and subscribe, because it really helps the channel. And put your comments down below if you've got any more advice to give, constructive criticism, or you know, if you think I've missed anything out, then do ask or say it if you know it. So yeah, thanks very much for watching.